Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Andrew McKinney. I'm going to do a presentation today on a bit about my world so far within the GIS industry. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started on the presentation. And hopefully you'll glean something from this. First off, I want to thank Jeremy and Dr. Guy Wally and Demetrio Zarakis for allowing me to talk today for the KSU GIS Day in 2020. I'm always appreciative when I get to continue to help in some way, whether that's presentations on technical demos, which I'm much more comfortable doing, or talk about the GIS industry and my experience so far, which is what we'll be talking about today. So I hope everybody has a great GIS Day 2020. It's always one of my favorite weeks of the year. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen. All right. So my presentation today is called My Time in Space, Industry Insights, Guiding Principles, and Lessons Learned During My Career in GIS so far. Again, this was specifically put together for Kentucky State University's GIS Day 2020. So the way this presentation is going to go over, I'm going to have a little bit about me, which is always weird, but hopefully you'll glean a little bit about who I am and what I've done the past 12 plus years in GIS. Talk a bit about industry insights, and then some guiding principles that I tend to follow no matter where I am within my career, and then some overall sort of lessons learned, just sort of high level topics that I always tend to tell people about that I think have helped me the most within my career so far. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So a bit about me. I'm the GIS coordinator for the Office of Civic Innovation and Technology for Louisville Metro Government. My role in Louisville Metro Government is to make sure that our agencies have the GIS data, the GIS knowledge, the software, the skills, the understanding to do any type of spatial work within their environment. That could be anything from answering a question of, hey, where is this data? Or I'm thinking about doing this project. What do I need to do to get there? So I'll work with them on that. I also coordinate user group meetings, and I also work with our local consortium, Logic, the Louisville Jefferson County Information Consortium, as a kind of an intermediary between them and their GIS infrastructure and Louisville Metro government. So my previous positions, I was the team lead for the GIS Support Services branch at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. I started off there back in 2009 as a geo processing specialist one. And with that, I was on the help desk, so answering the phone, answering questions about GIS, how it can be utilized within the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and then continue to build my knowledge and skills and slowly transition to the GIS mobile lead, where I focused mostly on mobile GIS. So any projects where we had to bring technology into the field, whether that's collecting data, updating data, mapping assets, I've focused heavily on the mobile portions of that. And then eventually became the team lead a few years after that as the person who coordinated projects within our team. So I would meet with agencies more at a higher level to talk about their needs and talk about the services that we could provide and then coordinate those projects within the team itself at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And that was a team usually varying between 5 to 7 people of various parts of that team. So servers, data, projects, desktop help desk, things like that. Before that, I was my first position was as a GIS analyst for the Community Resource Network at the Metro United Way. I actually started off as an intern there in 2008, and then was hired on full time for a year, and then I got the job at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And my focus there was more demographics. The Community Resource Network focused on asset building for communities around the area, bringing up test scores for underserved youth, as well as networking, um, offering networking events so people in the community can come out and get together because that's a great way to build your community is by knowing who your neighbors are. And did that for like I said for a year, and then went over the transition to the transportation cabinet. So I've been with the Louisville Metro government for about 3.5, close to 4 years now. Um, I'm also currently the 2020 president-elect for the Kentucky Association of Mapping Professionals, also known as CAMP. That also means that I will be the 2021 president. The president-elect has the role of chairing the conference. So that was a big part of what my duties were this year, was chairing our 2020 Kentucky GIS conference, which was virtually, which had a lot of interesting work involved. And it was recently, it was done in the end of September of this year. Hopefully we can get back together in a physical form next year, but the virtual conference went over pretty well, and we're glad that we were able to provide that to our members and community in general. A little bit before that, I've received my Bachelor's of Science degree in Geography and Geosciences with a concentration in GIS from the University of Louisville. Um, that's sort of how I got, obviously, into understanding what GIS is and how to use it, and that definitely helped me succeed throughout my career. So just some industry insights. These are just small sort of things that I've seen since I've been in GIS. Like I said, I've been in GIS for about 12 plus years now. It's flown by. And this is by no means a holistic look of the entire industry, but just where I've been and where I've come from. These are things that I've noticed. So if you're thinking about a career in GIS or a career utilizing GIS, then hopefully these will kind of help guide you along that path. GIS is, geographic information sciences or systems, and it is a tool to allow you to do your job in a more efficient and effective manner, I believe. Me as a GIS professional, I focus on the technology side, but we have a lot of people within Louisville Metro government that aren't technically GIS professionals, but they use the GIS tools to 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 for their job, depending on what they're trying to do. So my portion of this is going to talk more about the GIS professional and the technology side. But know that if you are considering anything that touches GIS, anything outside of that, whether that's public health or um, construction or public works or environmental work or whatever, GIS touches all these industries. So hopefully you can utilize some of these skills as well to know what GIS can do for you. So with that, so just some general insights. What I've learned in GIS is if you can learn the fundamentals and what questions to ask, that's going to be extraordinarily helpful. The GIS as a tool has a very wide berth, so you can use it for pretty much anything in the spatial world, from just mapping, cartography, to data analysis, to visualizations such as dashboarding and infographics, things like that. And you're not going to know it all. You're not going to know it all, but knowing the fundamentals of what makes a GIS tick will really serve you well and figure out what questions to ask. And that's general in IT as well. They say that some of the best IT professionals just know how to Google a little bit better than others, and that's awfully true for GIS as well. We're not going to know it all, but know how to ask the question will definitely serve you in the long run. And another thing is you'll learn a lot about GIS on the job. This is one thing that I think is probably true for a lot of industries, that when you're in school, a lot of that stuff is canned, it's packaged up, and it feels sort of systematic. Where when you get into a professional environment, it's a bit more volatile. You run into roadblocks. The data is not in the best quality. The software may not be exactly up to date. Things like that. But then into it, somebody will ask you a question and you'll not know how to answer it. So you do your research and then you figure out how to do it as you go. And that's where I learned a lot of what I know now is on the job, working in the industry for a while, getting a question from leadership and trying to answer it. So as you're transitioning into a professional work environment, just be aware that it could be a bit daunting at first. But as you kind of continue learning and working with the system, things get a lot easier. One thing I wish someone told me a long time ago is that you'll deal with a lot of dirty data. There's a ton of data out there in the world, and you spend a lot of your time, especially at the beginning of any project that you're working on, cleaning up that data. So what I do with that knowledge now is if I'm starting a project or if I'm working with an agency or if I'm wanting to do something, I think about my data. 90% of the work that I do at first is thinking about the data and how to organize it and how to prepare it for collection. Um, because if you don't do that at the beginning, then once you get that data or once you start to work with it, analyze it, map it, you spend a lot of time manipulating that data to get into a way that could be useful. So that was a big struggle, especially years ago when people may have collected information and then they thought about later on, hey, we could map this. With that, not thinking about it from the get go, really you spend a lot of time at the end trying to get it into a state where you can. So just something to consider that you will deal with a lot of dirty data. So I think a lot of your focus could be on that part of it. Learning how to manipulate data, work with data, understand it will definitely serve you well. And then especially in technology, but GIS specifically here, continue education is a must. There's constantly new things coming out, new technologies, new ways of doing things. You really do have to be willing to take a little bit of training, try something new. I was reading a book recently, and one of the comments they had mentioned in there was a little rough, but they said innovate or die. I don't think you'll necessarily uh, die, but what they're saying is that if you don't keep up with the trends and the technology, then you're really going to suffer in the long term. So make sure that you're under the understanding that as new things come out, even though you may not need it now, it's definitely something to look into and learn about later on. So then some technology insights as far as GIS is concerned, and what I've seen is some ongoing trends as well as future trends. Data automation is still a real struggle. Um, there's a lot of projects that I've worked on in the past where it's a one-time thing, but most of the projects that I work on, you sort of have a continuous model to where you're doing the same thing over and over again. But not only that, data is everywhere in various systems. You'll have data in Excel, you'll have data in a database, you'll have data just in a file, you'll have data in a PDF document. So trying to take that information and move it around, you'll do a lot of busy work if you don't learn how to work within these data automation worlds. So GIS in general too, start looking early into building models, what that takes, simple models. Also start looking into things like Python and R. It's going to make your life easier at the beginning, but also set you up for success in the future with being able to pull information out, manipulate it the way you want it, and then push it into another environment for visualization, for mapping, for analysis. I'm also seeing a whole lot more data visualizations. And what I mean by that is more dashboards and infographics, especially within the last year. These are popping up a lot more in our world because as GIS professionals, we can look at a map and interpret it pretty quickly. But leaders and those that aren't in that data set or aren't in that project in depth need to glean information right away. And dashboards and other infographics do a really good job of telling the story that you want to portray. Working in the COVID-19 response, our leaders and the public in general really appreciated the dashboards and the infographics that we put out. There's a lot of work that's done on the back end, but getting it to that point has really opened people's eyes up to what it can do. So I see this as any big project, big epidemic, big whatever, people are going to look for these dashboards and these infographics to start getting the information that they need. I've noticed a big emphasis on cloud-based systems. I know this has been a trend going on for a long time. People have been talking about cloud for a while, but especially working from home, that has become very true. These cloud-based systems have become more robust, easier to work with, more secure. And with that, you get more sharing opportunities, sharing the models that you build, sharing the code that you build, sharing the data that you build, as well as providing this information to the public. With more people getting comfortable working and visualizing data, open data systems have popped up all over the place. So that's something to definitely consider as you're thinking about your projects is how can you serve this information out to the public, because it's pretty amazing what they can do with your information that you never even thought about. So open data is something that is here and it's continually asked about from leadership to get more information out to the public. And then open source GIS. This is something that I haven't dabbled in a lot, but I've been in a government entity for some time now, and we've worked with Esri technology. However, there's a lot of really great tools out there for those that aren't capable of using these kind of expensive packages. So look into things out there like QGIS and GRASS that allow you to work with it now. Of course, there are ways to get other technology cheaper, but there's a lot of open source opportunities out there for you to start thinking about now and just learning the fundamentals of GIS and GIS analysis. So hopefully those will help you. These are the things that I've just sort of thought about pretty routinely, especially this last year. So hopefully, there's going to be more obviously than just these, but these are the ones that I've seen as pretty high on our list. So some guiding principles. These are some principles that I've followed throughout my career. I've learned them from other leaders that I've worked with, as well as learned them just through trial and error, through failures, things of that nature. So things that I kind of use as my guiding principles through my career so far is say yes to as much as you can, but try to understand your limits. I have used that principle for some time now. It can feel really uncomfortable to say yes to some things. You think you're too busy or you don't think it's the right opportunity. But I've found the more I say yes, the better the opportunity or the more opportunities that I get. And you really kind of surprise yourself with what those things bring. I understand that it can feel a little daunting, especially if you are busy or if you're uncomfortable. It's not something that you're normally interested in doing. But I have noticed that just being willing to say yes has brought me much closer to where I am now than if I would have said no to a lot of things. In fact, my current position right now wouldn't be if I didn't say yes to a couple other things. And we'll learn a little bit more about that later. Another thing is everyone is a professional in their own way, and I keep quality customer service at every step of what I'm doing. I'm a big fan of treating those, especially in a professional environment, as a professional, even though if they don't understand my world, as opposed to saying, "Why don't you do this?" It's more of, "Have you thought about this?" Working with engineers, they know their profession extraordinarily well, but they don't know mine very well. So being sensitive to that idea of they may not know about this product, they may not know about this tool, they may not know about this stuff. So I constantly look at it as I'm more of a customer service representative than anything. I've been in customer service a lot for a long time. I was in a server at a restaurant for a long time, so that's a front-facing customer service opportunity there. I worked at a retail store as a front desk coordinator for a long time, as well as a call center and as IT support. So before I even got into GIS, a lot of my jobs were focused around customer service, and I've used those principles throughout my career because I look at every opportunity as working with a new customer because you want to build that relationship and keep them for the long run. And also be open to opportunities you were not planning for. This is tough when if you're a planner that you have this idea of A to Z and how to get there, but be open to shift a little bit. I actually have a degree in travel and tourism, and my long-term goal was to be a travel planner for a business. Well, when I went to U of L to get my bachelor's degree, I was looking at opportunities, and I thought geography would help with the travel part of it, and I saw GIS. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I went to a talk on it, learned a little bit more about it, and I thought, if I go into this, this is going to sort of separate me from my long-term goal. But it worked out really nicely. I also wanted to stick with transportation GIS. I really enjoyed working in transportation. Again, it kind of goes back to my travel, people moving, products moving, things moving around. But then when the opportunity of Louisville Metro government came up to be more of a coordinator, that kind of opened up my world to maybe I can broaden my focus, still have a little bit of that transportation work, but do other things as well. And that just sort of idea of setting yourself up for other opportunities I think has really served me for where I am today. I also think that while I was applying for graduate school as well, I wanted to go to graduate school and get my master's after I graduated from my bachelor's. Took the tests, did some interviews, applied, but then didn't get into the school that I really wanted to. A little bummed out. Thought I'll just apply next year and see what I can do. But then the opportunity of transportation opened up. I was really focused on getting my master's degree, but then this job opportunity opened up. right around that same time when I found out that I wasn't able to go to the school of my choice. So another thing was, just again, you know, yeah, you want to go get a graduate degree. That's still something you could do later on. But this other door opened up, and at that time I was a little nervous, but I stepped through it, and I'm glad because again, it got me to where I am now. My final thing is just as to be a storyteller. It's really a way that I look at every single project that I work on. What's intriguing about it? Why am I doing it? If I look at it from a storytelling standpoint, um, it really allows me to focus on all the steps that I need in order to build a really good product. I just look at it as a book, right? You have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and at the very end, you have this really nice package that you can hand off to somebody. So not only do I look at it when I'm doing presentations or talks or whatever, but I look at it just from a project standpoint as well. What are you trying to tell? What's your outcome? And who your audience is. Whenever you're a storyteller, you have to guide your talk or guide your story based off of who you think your projected audience is. Now, it can be broader than what you think, but this is true for anything that you produce. So that's just something that I've considered as I start anything new is how to kind of tell that story. And then some lessons learned. These are just real quick, high level things that I find that have kind of uh, guided me along a little bit quicker than if I didn't follow these rules. Um, Find a focus you enjoy and learn a little about a lot. So um, like in GIS, it's a very broad tool, it's very broad science, it's a very broad system. You can't learn it all. Find something that you really enjoy doing. Like when I was in transportation, I really enjoyed working in the mobile environment. I like getting out of the office. But don't pigeonhole yourself into that. Learn a little bit about everything. Learn a little bit about, server environments and databases and teaching and uh, standard analysis and data manipulation. You don't have to know every part of it, but learning a little bit about it will definitely, uh, you know, do you well in the long run. I always call it my, I'd like to have a little bit of knowledge so I can speak intelligently about it. That's it. So you'll hear me say that a lot, just so I can speak intelligently about it, so I can have the conversation and learn a little bit more about it and talk to someone about it, and then hopefully I've set myself up for success there. But if you're too broad and you're trying to learn everything, you tend to lose focus. So I think that's helped me to, you know, get a major focus, but then, be open to the opportunity of learning other things around that arena. Also, work with a mentor, either informally or formally. This has served me like no other. And don't have just one mentor, have as many as you possibly can. And get people outside of your comfort zone. Get people that think differently than you. Get people outside of your industry. Um, and make it a goal to meet with them often and have questions and talk with them and learn from them. That could be a family member, that could be a business or a colleague. That could be someone within, if you're religious, it could be someone within your church. If you're within a professional organization, it could be someone there. But talking to somebody about your career and advancements and what you're working on, it definitely gives you a different perspective. Um, and I also find whenever I'm stuck on something, I can call one of my mentors up and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." And a lot of times I'll solve it myself on the phone with them, or they'll walk me through it, and it definitely helps, kind of get me over any sort of hump that I need to. That also goes into the next part of what I've always kind of focused in on was joining a professional group and get involved. I don't find it enough to just join the group that I'm in and just kind of be a passive member. I try to be an active participant. I think that is where you gain the most from that group is being involved, and that could be small, very small, or it could be as big as you want it. You could start small and grow. But personally, I've been part of camp for a long time. I mentioned it earlier, which is the Kentucky Association of Mapping Professionals, and I joined that at the request of one of my mentors. Said that he thinks that having a professional group in your life is beneficial, not only to learn more about your uh, work, but also as a networking opportunity and to meet people that you probably never would have within your own, your own world. So the networking part of it has been the best reason to join this professional group because I've met amazing people. I've learned amazing things, opportunities such as this, where I probably wouldn't have had that if I wasn't part of a professional group. And it's a really good way to give back to the community. That's another thing that I'm pretty passionate about is giving back to the GIS community for what it's worth. Um, I don't have all the answers. I have very little. But what I do have, I do want to give, and I do want to, quote unquote, preach about our world because I think GIS specifically can solve solve all the world's problems. Um, but uh, I do think getting involved with a group like Camp or Eurissa or any other professional group will definitely lead you down a good path to success within whatever industry you choose to be in. Um, so with that, I want to say thank you. Thanks again, KSU. I hope this was helpful. I'm much more of a technical presenter. I do a lot of projects where I'm getting down in the weeds and doing analysis and creating cool content. So this was a fun exercise for me to think a little differently. Again, it goes back to that saying yes. This isn't something I'm normally comfortable doing, but I'm glad I did it and I hope somebody learned something. I've always said whenever I teach a class is if that one person learned one thing, then I didn't waste my time. Um, but learn more about GIS, as much as you can, whether it's GIS as a technology or just what it could do for anything that you're interested in, because you'll be very surprised on how it can kind of enlighten you in your world. So with that, I'm going to unshare my screen, sign off, and say thank you again, and happy GIS Day. And hopefully we'll get to meet sometime in person. Thanks.